Chosen one. Before you even pressed play, something older than this day had already turned its gaze toward you. And whether you realize it or not, you are standing inside a moment that was not thrown together by chance. A moment that carries a specific weight, a specific assignment, and a specific sound meant for your spirit alone. You may think you wandered here out of boredom, out of habit, out of curiosity, but there is a deeper current underneath those surface reasons. A quiet orchestration that has been moving pieces around your life in ways you did not see. Arranging timing, arranging encounters, arranging delays and detours so that you would arrive here with the exact history you carry right now. Because what is about to be spoken could not have been heard by the version of you that existed even a year ago, even a month ago, even a week ago. You feel that, don't you? Something in your chest that leans in a little closer. An ache behind your eyes, a strange mixture of resistance and recognition threading through you as if part of you wants to turn away. And part of you knows, with a deep, almost ancient knowing, that this is the very voice you have been straining to hear in the silence between your thoughts. You have walked through seasons where your prayers seemed to evaporate into the air, where your whispered cries at 3 a.m. felt like they were bouncing off a closed ceiling, where you looked around at other people's breakthroughs and quietly wondered if heaven had somehow skipped your name by mistake, if maybe you were asking for too much. Hoping for too much, believing for something that was never actually written into your story. And in those hours, it was easy to believe the lie that you had been overlooked, that your tears were background noise in a loud universe, that your effort didn't matter. Yet even in those moments, while you were convinced nothing was happening, something unseen was registering every sigh, every choice to keep going. When giving up seemed more rational every time you swallowed your own pain so you wouldn't burden others. All of it was being recorded, not in a cold ledger, but in the heart of the one who has been tracking your steps from the beginning, and what felt to you like unanswered petitions were in reality seeds being buried in a soil you did not understand. You expected certain doors to open at certain times, expected miracles to appear on your schedule, expected answers to arrive in the shapes you had already rehearsed in your mind, and when they didn't, disappointment wrapped itself around your faith like a fog. But hear this clearly. The delay was never proof that you were unwanted. It was proof that what you were asking for was being aligned with something larger than your immediate comfort. Right now, as these words move toward you, there is a convergence happening in the unseen. A crossing of timelines where what has been forming in secret is beginning to touch what you can see, and that is why your spirit feels both restless and drawn. Why you sense a quiet pressure on your heart as if something is being pushed into place inside you. This is not a casual message drifting across your screen. This is a summons, a spiritual alert, a moment where heaven leans close and says, "Pay attention. This is for you." I am not speaking to the mask you wear around people, not to the role you perform to get through your day, but to the core of you that has been silently wondering if your existence has weight beyond survival. If there is a reason you keep getting back up when no one is cheering, if the pain you've gone through is ever going to mean anything more than just pain. There is an answer forming, chosen one, and it does not arrive as a gentle pat on the back, but as a call that cuts through excuses and hesitation. This is not entertainment, not something to consume and forget. This is an invitation into a different way of seeing your past, your present, and your future, and it requires more from you than passive listening. Every time you cried alone and wiped your face before anyone could see, every moment you stayed kind when you were treated with indifference or cruelty. Every season where you carried responsibility that was far heavier than anyone realized, these were not wasted episodes in a meaningless storyline. They were training, calibration, preparation for a responsibility that you sensed but could never clearly name. The reason some of your prayers were not answered in the way and time frame you expected is because they were being woven into a far more intricate design than the quick fixes you were asking for. You were asking for relief. But heaven was building capacity. You were asking for immediate rescue. But heaven was shaping endurance. You were asking for visible proof. But heaven was working on the invisible infrastructure of your identity so that when the visible proof arrived, it would not crush you, distract you, or lead you into places that your character could not sustain. Even now, Something is shifting not out there first, but in you, in the place where your disappointments and hopes have been arguing with each other. You may feel a tightening in your body, a strange heat, a subtle trembling in your awareness, as if you are standing near a doorway that is beginning to open, and that is exactly what is happening. The future you thought was postponed is stepping out of tomorrow and beginning to stand in front of you right now. Understand this with clarity. There are thresholds in life that do not stay open forever. Windows of divine timing where alignment, willingness, and spiritual sensitivity all meet. And when that happens, something that once seemed impossible becomes suddenly accessible, but only if you move. This is one of those thresholds. You have been asking for change, but change rarely arrives wrapped in comfort. It comes with the demand that you stop calling yourself what people called you when they didn't understand you, that you stop living as if your story peaked in your worst season, that you stop diminishing your own gifts just to make others feel more secure around you. There is a reason this message feels like an interruption, like someone stepping into the room of your thoughts and turning on the light. That is because what is approaching your life cannot coexist with the old excuses that kept you bound to smaller versions of yourself. This is not about frightening you into action. It is about telling you the truth with a mercy that refuses to lie to you just to keep you comfortable. If you insist on holding on to the identity you constructed out of pain, if you choose to stay at the edge of your calling because you fear what stepping forward will cost, the opportunities meant to meet you here can pass you by. Not because you are cursed or rejected, but because heaven will not force you to carry what you continually refuse to accept. Yet, for the one who recognizes the gravity of this moment, who feels that inner yes, rising even while the mind is uncertain, something irreversible begins. There is a rearranging of perception, a reordering of what you value, a sudden clarity about what you can no longer tolerate in your life. Compromises, patterns, relationships, and environments that quietly suffocate your spirit are being exposed. And once you see them clearly, you will not be able to unsee them. You are being invited into a deeper awareness of who you actually are beneath trauma, culture, and labels. Not what your failures say. You are not what your critics say. You are not what your fears say you are, but what was spoken over you before you ever took a breath. The one who breathed galaxies into existence has never once lost track of you, and while you stood in rooms where no one noticed your presence, you were fully seen. While you questioned whether any of your sacrifices mattered, every single one was being counted. While you wondered if your kindness, your loyalty, your quiet acts of integrity were being wasted on people who did not value you. Those choices were building a foundation for a life you haven't even fully glimpsed yet. There were seasons where you felt like a background character in your own story, watching others be celebrated. Elevated, chosen, while you remained in the shadows. But the shadows were not punishment, they were protection. A hidden workshop where your strength was being forged without the distraction of applause or the distortion of other people's expectations. You did not see the hands that were guiding you through those tight places. You did not see the battles that were fought over your destiny. You did not see the spiritual storms that were diverted before they ever reached you. But you felt the aftermath, the unexplainable sense that somehow, despite everything, you were still here for a reason. That reason is beginning to surface. You stand now in a kind of spiritual intersection where all the tears that seemed pointless, all the pressure that made you feel like you were going to shatter, all the waiting that stretched far past what you thought you could endure are being gathered and repurposed into a new kind of authority and clarity. The atmosphere around your life is not the same as it was, even if your surroundings look unchanged, because inside you, a line has been drawn between who you were and who you cannot help but become. There is a quieter, deeper voice rising in you that says, I can't go back to pretending I don't know what. I know I can't keep shrinking to fit spaces that were never built for my full stature. I can't keep calling lack and chaos my home. And that internal shift is the evidence that heaven has moved your name into a different category. You are no longer simply surviving a story. You are stepping into the revelation of why you were written into existence at all. The same way a discarded stone can be lifted and placed at the very center of a structure, the very parts of you that were rejected, mocked, or misunderstood are being repositioned as essential to the next stage of your journey. The traits people told you were too much. The dreams, they said, were unrealistic, the depth of your sensitivity that made you feel like you were always carrying more than everyone else. These are not defects, they are clues. The long stretch of feeling unseen has not disqualified you. It has prepared you to hold influence without being owned by it, to carry responsibility without being crushed by it, to move in power without forgetting compassion. Right now, heaven is not silent. It is leaning in, echoing with your name, with your story, with the purpose that has been quietly maturing beneath every disappointment. And this message is a confirmation that the hour you thought you missed is actually arriving right on time. You are not late. You are right on schedule for a timeline you did not design but have been prepared to inhabit. And if you will allow this truth to sink past your defenses and into the places where you've secretly believed you were not enough, something will ignite that cannot easily be extinguished. This is your turning point. Chosen one. Not a pretty phrase or motivational slogan, but a spiritual reality unfolding as you listen. The moment where the weight of your past stops functioning as an anchor and begins functioning as a testament. The moment where your history stops arguing against your worth and starts proving your resilience. The moment where what once made you feel disqualified becomes the exact evidence that you were always being shaped for more. Chosen one. There is a gravity to your ascent that extends far beyond your own story. A weight that will be felt by those who underestimated you, those who quietly stepped away when the road grew steep, those who assumed your silence meant surrender and your obscurity meant insignificance. Because what is unfolding now is not a small personal victory, but the unveiling of something that has been maturing in hidden places while others were busy drawing conclusions about your limitations. The pressure that once threatened to fracture you has completed its assignment, not by destroying you, but by compressing you into a stronger form, and the season of preparation that felt endless was never a sign that you were stuck, but a sacred interval in which your inner structure was being fortified to carry a future that would have crushed the earlier version of you. You mistook the closed doors for rejection, the unanswered questions for disinterest from heaven, the long stretches of isolation for abandonment. Yet beneath that silence, an intricate design was being assembled without interference. And what appeared to you as delay was in truth divine pacing, a calibration of timing so precise that it required you to outgrow certain environments, certain attachments, certain assumptions before the next layer of your destiny could be revealed. There were truths about your life that had to remain veiled, because revelation without readiness can become ruin, and you were being readied in ways you could not see your character being tempered. Your discernment sharpened your emotional endurance, expanded so that when the unveiling came, you would not mismanage it, distort it, or collapse under its magnitude. You were never meant to measure your progress by the frantic clocks of the world, never designed to compete with timelines that were never assigned to you, and the loneliness you endured, the misunderstandings, the seasons where you felt like an outsider in rooms you worked so hard to enter, were not evidence of deficiency, but evidence that you were being separated for something that required depth rather than applause. Every pause carried intention, every postponement carried purpose, and even when you wrestled with doubt and questioned why your efforts seemed to echo into emptiness, something was being constructed beyond the reach of public opinion, something too sacred to be exposed prematurely, something that required stillness to take shape. You thought you were being sidelined, yet you were being shielded. You thought opportunities were slipping through your fingers, yet many of those opportunities would have locked you into a smaller narrative than the one being authored for you now. You thought you were buried, yet you were being planted. And now the restraint that once frustrated you is beginning to loosen because the formation has reached a stage where concealment is no longer necessary. And what was forged in obscurity is prepared to withstand visibility without losing its integrity. Those who labeled you as fragile or insignificant will soon encounter the version of you that was sculpted in the dark. The version strengthened by nights of wrestling with uncertainty. The version refined by choosing integrity over impulse when no one would have known the difference, and the contrast will be undeniable, not because you seek vindication, but because authenticity carries its own authority. This is not a random turning point. It is the continuation of a process that began long before you were conscious of it. And if something within you resonates with these words, If you feel that quiet recognition that this is not just motivational noise, but confirmation, then understand that awareness itself is part of the unveiling. Become still for a moment, not in performance, but in presence, because agreement in the spirit is more powerful than any outward action. When you respond internally with a sincere yes, when you align your heart with what is being spoken over you, you participate in the acceleration of what is already in motion. What may look like a simple act on the surface, engaging, staying connected, declaring your readiness, becomes in the unseen a statement of consent, a declaration that you are no longer resisting your own expansion, that you are willing to step into alignment with the calling that has been pressing against your life. When you affirm that you are open, that you are awake, that you are prepared to receive truth, even when it disrupts your comfort, you are signaling to heaven that you trust the process that shaped you, that you recognize the wisdom in the waiting, that you understand. Protection does not always feel pleasant while it is happening. The slammed doors you once mourned were not indictments against your worth, but barricades against premature entry. And had they opened when you demanded, you might have mistaken access for arrival and settled into spaces that could never have contained your full measure. You were being prevented from shrinking yourself to fit rooms that required you to dim your light, and although that prevention felt like loss, it was preservation. Now you stand at the edge of a different kind of moment, one that requires you to reinterpret your history not as a series of failures, but as a curriculum tailored specifically to you. Each hardship, a lesson in resilience; each disappointment, a refinement of desire; each betrayal, a sharpening of discernment. There is a difficult truth that many resist because it demands a deeper trust. When circumstances felt as though they were pressing you into the ground, compressing your options, suffocating your hope, you are not being discarded, but embedded like a seed that must disappear beneath the soil before it can rise in strength. The sensation of being overwhelmed, of having everything collapse at once, was not the finale of your story, but the incubation of a greater expression of who you are, and the darkness that surrounded you was not emptiness, but enclosure, a womb-like space where unseen transformation was taking place. You feared you were finished, yet you were only entering the phase where roots were extending beyond what your eyes could measure, and roots require darkness before they can support light. The grief, the confusion, the moments where you questioned whether you had misheard your calling or misunderstood your path were not signs that you were on the wrong road, but signs that growth was happening below the surface, growth that demanded surrender rather than control. None of the pain was random. None of the loss was wasted energy, evaporating into nothingness. It was all being repurposed into a resilience that cannot be imitated or faked, a depth that cannot be acquired through shortcuts, a steadiness that only emerges after you have survived your own doubts. You believed the silence meant absence, yet the silence was shelter. You believed the pressure meant punishment, yet the pressure was shaping. You believed the burial meant conclusion, yet the burial was preparation for multiplication. And now something within you can sense the shift like the first tremor before the ground breaks open and a sprout reaches toward the sun, because the weight that once pinned you down is lifting not gradually in a way that leaves you unsure, but decisively with a clarity that says this chapter has served its purpose. You are not merely stepping back into visibility as the same person who retreated into obscurity. You are emerging altered, carrying a composure that comes from having faced your own fragility and survived it, carrying a confidence that does not need to shout because it has already been tested in silence. The narrative that once defined you as overlooked is dissolving, and in its place a new awareness is taking root. An understanding that you were never small, only sheltered, never broken beyond repair, only broken open so that something truer could rise. What felt like the end of everything was in fact the threshold of your deeper becoming, and the authority you carry now is not borrowed from external validation, but born from endurance. The season of waiting has accomplished its work, the formation is complete enough for revelation to begin, and the light you are stepping into will not expose weakness, but display the craftsmanship that was hidden in the dark. You are not returning to reclaim scraps of what you thought you lost. You are advancing with substance forged through sacrifice, and the presence you bring into the next phase of your life will carry a resonance that cannot be ignored because it is anchored in authenticity rather than ambition. The time you thought was wasted was investment. The silence you feared was emptiness, was incubation, and the collapse you interpreted as finality was in truth the breaking of a shell that could no longer contain who you were becoming. And as you rise now, it will not be fragile or tentative, but grounded, deliberate, and undeniable, because the soil that once concealed you has finished its work and the life within you has outgrown the ground. Chosen one. The ones who once glanced at you with dismissal, who measured your worth by your current circumstances and concluded you would never surpass the narrow frame they placed around you, are about to witness the outcome of a pressure. They misunderstood because what they interpreted as your breaking point was in truth your refinement, and what they assumed would shrink you was silently compressing you into a denser, steadier, more unshakable version of yourself. You are not stepping back into visibility as the same person who endured those seasons of obscurity. You are emerging recalibrated, awake in a way that cannot be reversed, carrying a stillness that only comes from surviving what was meant to erase you. There is a difference between surviving and being transformed, and you have crossed that threshold without even realizing it. The tremors that once rattled your confidence no longer hold the same authority over your decisions. The fears that once negotiated your boundaries are losing their voice, and when heaven releases a decree over a life, no resistance, human or internal, has the final say. There comes a point in destiny when a higher command overrides every lesser narrative, when what has been spoken in the unseen begins to manifest in ways that dismantle the structures that once confined you. And at that moment, the lies you carried about yourself, about being too much, too flawed, too late, too inexperienced, too different, lose their scaffolding and collapse under the weight of truth. For too long, you allowed anxiety to script your choices, shrinking your ambitions to fit the comfort levels of those around you, filtering your vision through the expectations of people who only saw fragments of your potential, accepting labels that were convenient for others, but suffocating for you. Yet, there is a word being released over your life that does not consult public opinion, a verdict that does not require consensus, a purpose that does not dissolve because you hesitated once or because someone walked away when things became inconvenient. The past does not possess the authority to cancel what has already been established in the spirit, and even your moments of doubt were woven into the larger tapestry rather than disqualifying you from it. What was declared over you did not evaporate when you stumbled, and what was set in motion did not reverse itself because you needed time to gather your strength. There is a shift occurring where inertia gives way to motion, where stagnation is replaced by undeniable momentum, and the very circumstances that once seemed immovable are beginning to rearrange themselves in response to a timing that has finally ripened. What tried to obstruct you will be reduced to a witness of your progress, and this movement is not frantic or chaotic, but deliberate and accelerated at the same time, like a river that has been dammed for years, suddenly finding release and carving a new path with unstoppable force. You felt invisible for longer than you care to admit, watched others advance while you remained in the wings, questioning whether your own hour would ever strike, wondering if perhaps you misinterpreted your calling or imagined your potential. Yet those concealed years were not empty space in your narrative. They were incubation containment, a sacred enclosure where your roots extended deeper while your branches remained hidden. Isolation refined you in ways applause never could, and the silence that once felt like neglect was in fact a training ground for discernment, teaching you to hear what others could not, to recognize subtle shifts, to anchor yourself internally rather than relying on external validation. While it appeared as though nothing significant was unfolding, something intricate was being strengthened beneath the surface. Resilience was thickening, perception was sharpening, character was being reinforced in areas no spotlight could reach, and the very parts of you that felt neglected were being fortified against future pressures. You were not overlooked. You were being preserved until the weight of what you carry could no longer be ignored. Now, the lid that once kept you contained is lifting, and what was cultivated in secrecy is stepping into visibility with substance rather than spectacle. The same spaces that once overlooked you will find it impossible to overlook you any longer. Not because you are demanding attention, but because presence formed in obscurity carries a gravity that speaks without shouting. Even those who doubted the trajectory of your life will sense that this emergence is not impulsive or accidental, but the culmination of a process that required patience, endurance, and a depth they never witnessed. And you who remember the nights when sleep refused to come, when tears felt heavier than language, and your thoughts circled relentlessly around questions you could not answer, must understand that those hours were not void of meaning. They were formative, chiseling away illusions, stripping away dependencies, carving space within you for a sturdier identity to take root. Nothing you released in those hidden moments vanished into nothingness. Every tear was counted. Every silent plea registered, every internal battle acknowledged, and what once streamed from you as sorrow is now transmuting into authority. The wounds you endured have become credentials that cannot be fabricated, granting you a voice that resonates with authenticity rather than theory. And the grief that once threatened to mute you is transforming into a force that carries conviction. What was intended to weaken your resolve has been repurposed as reinforcement. What was designed to humiliate you has been converted into humility anchored in strength. And the one who witnessed your unraveling in private is now orchestrating a public display of resilience that cannot be explained away. You are not the same as the person who first entered that season of pressure. Something in you has crystallized a clarity that does not depend on external reassurance, a steadiness that does not dissolve when challenged. The narrative of your life is shifting from survival to influence, from questioning your worth to embodying it, from reacting to circumstances to shaping them. The emergence you are stepping into will not be fleeting because it is built on foundations laid in darkness, and darkness paradoxically provided the stability that light alone could not. The pain that once felt like an endless storm has condensed into insight, the confusion into discernment, the betrayal into boundaries. And as you move forward, you will carry not bitterness but depth, not fragility but tempered strength. The transformation is not cosmetic. It is structural, altering the way you perceive obstacles, the way you respond to criticism, the way you define success. What was concealed is now equipped to stand in exposure without crumbling, and what rises within you is not arrogance, but alignment, a synchronization between who you are internally and what you are prepared to express externally. The chains that once persuaded you to minimize your dreams are dissolving. The internal narratives that kept you apologizing for your ambition are being rewritten, and the season of asking whether you are enough is being replaced by the quiet certainty that you are exactly who you were being shaped to become. This is not mere advancement. It is acceleration guided by purpose, and the authority you are stepping into is not self-manufactured, but forged through trials that refined rather than destroyed you. What was whispered against you in moments of vulnerability is losing its influence, and the energy that once fueled your fear is being redirected into forward motion. You are no longer standing at the edge of your potential wondering if you are permitted to step forward. You are crossing into it with the awareness that the timing is no longer theoretical, but present. The world that once passed you by will begin to recognize a presence it cannot easily categorize, and the same history that once felt like a burden will reveal itself as the blueprint of your resilience. You are not returning to reclaim a missed opportunity. You are advancing into a dimension of your calling that required every detour, every delay, every silent battle to prepare you. The sorrow that once threatened to silence you has become the very cadence of your authority, and the testimony written in your endurance will speak louder than any defense you could have offered. This is the moment when what was spoken over your life begins to manifest in undeniable ways, when internal transformation spills into external reality, when the unseen work becomes visible without losing its depth. You have been shaped by fire, steadied by solitude, strengthened by adversity, and now you step forward, not as someone seeking validation, but as someone embodying revelation, carrying within you the proof that what was meant to diminish you has instead defined your rise. Chosen one, everything you have walked through, Everything that carved its mark into the deepest parts of you has become the very credential that gives your voice a weight it did not have before, a resonance that does not come from theory or imitation, but from surviving the kind of inner transformation that only pressure can produce. And now that the refining is complete, what remains in you is not fragility, but authority. Not confusion, but clarity, not the echo of past wounds, but a truth forged so thoroughly that it refuses to stay hidden any longer. The time of being muted, misrepresented, or overshadowed has reached its limit, and heaven is in the process of unveiling you in ways that will make sense of the years where you felt unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. You are stepping into a season where what was whispered behind your back loses its relevance because the light that is rising over your life has no partnership with distortion, and the judgments formed in the absence of your presence are being overturned by a revelation that exposes truth without wounding your spirit. What comes next is not a spectacle meant to shame those who misread you, but a clearing of the atmosphere, a restoration of identity, a stripping away of labels that others projected onto you because they did not understand the depth of your becoming. You were never the small, diminished version that some tried to confine you to. You were never the afterthought that circumstances tried to convince you that you were. You were never discarded, never defective, never forgotten, only concealed during the phases where visibility would have interrupted your growth. Those seasons where doors shut abruptly, where opportunities evaporated before you could explain yourself, where circumstances seemed to echo. Not you, not yet, were not punishments inflicted on your life, but protective barriers erected to keep you from walking into places that would have drained the very potential those same people would later celebrate. You assumed you were being left out, yet you were being preserved. You thought you were being denied, yet you were being delayed for alignment. You thought life was withholding what you deserved, yet heaven was holding it until the moment you would be able to sustain it without compromising your identity. Those closed doors were not dismissals. They were pauses filled with intention, silent barriers designed to ensure that when access returned, it would be access tied to your purpose rather than to your desperation. And the very spaces that once failed to recognize your value will feel it unmistakably when you re-enter, not because you come seeking approval, but because you carry a presence that cannot be overlooked. What they once ignored will now be impossible for them to deny. What opens next for you will not be hollow or performative, but substantial, carrying opportunity grounded in recognition rather than pity, respect born from clarity rather than confusion, and the quiet acknowledgement from those who once doubted that they misjudged your timing, your strength, and your potential. But understand this: when you walk back through those doors, you will not be returning to reclaim something you lost. You will be stepping forward to release what was developed within you while the world assumed you were stagnant. Your return is not a repetition. It is a revelation, a demonstration of what was quietly cultivated in you when no one was watching. And even now, beneath the surface of your life, something is stirring that cannot be dismissed as coincidence or emotional exaggeration. There is a movement that has been forming for longer than you realize, a momentum that has been gathering strength, waiting for the exact moment when both your spirit and your circumstances would be aligned enough to receive it. The unseen realm has taken notice of who you have become, and the atmosphere around your life has shifted because what is inside you has awakened in a way that cannot be reversed. You are not stumbling into this moment blindly. Though it may feel unfamiliar because every step, every painful stretching, every quiet triumph, every decision to rise even when rising felt impossible has been guiding you toward an hour that could not have arrived one moment earlier or later than it has. There were watchers assigned to your journey, not in the sense of an audience, but in the sense of guardianship, presence, and witness. They saw the nights when your heart was heavy and you kept walking anyway. They recognized the times you chose compassion when bitterness felt easier. They noted the moments you forgave even when forgiveness felt like losing. And these were not small decisions, but pivotal ones. Choices that shaped your spirit, sharpened your discernment, and forged a strength that no external validation could ever replicate. They know what it cost you to keep moving through seasons where nothing made sense, where your prayers seemed unanswered, where your hope flickered but never disappeared. And now they recognize the shift in your posture, the settledness in your gaze, the alignment in your spirit as evidence that you are stepping into the very strength you were being prepared for. What you feel rising within you is not arrogance, but awakening, not entitlement, but readiness, not pride, but understanding of who you have become through everything that tried to diminish you. You are not emerging as someone desperate for approval, but as someone who finally sees their own worth without needing the world to confirm it, and because of that, the world will begin to reflect back the truth you are now embodying. The veil is lifting not just around your circumstances, but around your identity, allowing you to see yourself without the distortions created by pain, fear, or misunderstanding. You are beginning to recognize that the things spoken in dark corners about you are dissolving not because you fought to correct them, but because truth has a weight that eventually outweighs rumor. There is no battle you need to fight to clear your name, because heaven itself is bearing witness to who you are, and when heaven speaks, no earthly opinion can suffocate that truth. The time where others defined you through their limited perceptions is ending because the emergence happening in your life is redefining you according to the identity that was written long before anyone had an opinion of you. You are stepping into a version of yourself that is not shaped by wounds, but strengthened by healing, not directed by fear, but led by purpose, not confined by uncertainty, but anchored in clarity. And as this unfolds, the world around you will sense a shift that might leave them astonished, but will feel undeniably familiar to you. Because deep down, even in your hardest seasons, something inside you always suspected that you were being shaped for something more. You have not been wandering without guidance. You have been carried through a process that required both patience and surrender. And now that the appointed moment is here, everything that once felt delayed is accelerating. Everything that once felt heavy is falling away. And everything that once felt confusing is beginning to make sense in ways that reveal just how precisely your journey has been orchestrated. You are entering a phase where what you carry, your wisdom, your insight, your resilience, your depth, will speak louder than any introduction you could ever give, and the spaces you step into will feel the shift before you say a word. The authority rising in you is not loud or forceful, but steady and undeniable, the kind that comes from surviving storms without losing your tenderness, from walking through fire, without letting it turn you bitter, from enduring loss, without allowing it to hollow you out. This authority cannot be taught, only lived. And now that you have lived it, it marks you in ways that others will sense intuitively. You are stepping into your life not timidly, but fully. Not apologetically, but consciously aware that the purpose entrusted to you was never meant to remain dormant, and the strength you carry now is not the result of ambition, but of surrender. The kind of surrender that allows transformation instead of resisting it. You have arrived at a threshold where the unseen recognizes the readiness of the seen, where your spirit recognizes its own maturity, and where the chapter that once felt impossible is finally unfolding with clarity. The movement rising around you is not random. It is the culmination of every quiet yes you gave when no one knew what you were choosing. Every step forward when stepping back would have been easier. Every moment of integrity when compromise would have brought quicker reward. This is your activation, chosen one, not because someone finally noticed you, but because you finally became the version of yourself who can carry what was always meant to be yours. Chosen one. There is a shift unfolding within and around you so profound that if you were to look back even a short distance behind you, you would barely recognize the version of yourself who once felt trapped beneath layers of hesitation, fear, and invisible restraints, because what once held you in place is beginning to loosen as surely as dawn follows night. And the authority that has always been part of your design is rising to the surface with a certainty that cannot be postponed. This emergence is not a solitary ascent, but a convergence, a meeting point, where what you have endured in the physical world intersects with what has been arranged in realms you cannot see, and as you move forward now, you will sense support rising around you in ways that may be subtle at first, yet unmistakable once your awareness catches up to the momentum that has already begun. You are not advancing by yourself, though. For so long it seemed like isolation was your only companion. Those who were assigned to protect you from a distance have been watching the quiet strengthening of your character. The steady deepening of your discernment, the way your spirit refused to collapse, even when circumstances pushed you toward breaking. And now that the hour appointed for your stepping forward has arrived, they are no longer remaining in the background, but shifting around. You guiding your steps with precision, because they know this is the moment your life has been leaning toward since before you could articulate your own purpose. You may feel as if you are beginning to understand yourself in a new way, as if the fragments of identity and possibility you used to carry like scattered puzzle pieces are drawing together into a coherent form. The dreams that once visited you softly arriving like faint whispers at the edge of your awareness are growing sharper, louder, more insistent, as though the future you are meant to inhabit is calling you by name and refusing to be ignored any longer. The nights ahead will not carry the same heaviness they once did, because something in the spiritual atmosphere has shifted. What was once empty silence will become a space where revelation unfolds, where visions rise like constellations against the backdrop of your rest, where the answers you tried to reason your way toward during the day will come with clarity in the quiet hours when your defenses are low enough for instruction to slip through. You will begin to recognize that certain images, certain dreams, certain impressions are not random sparks flickering through your imagination, but coded guidance shaped specifically for you. They will not wander or confuse, they will point direct a line, and you will feel an inner certainty the moment you experience them. An immediate knowing that what you are seeing is not fantasy, but blueprint, not hopeful projection, but spiritual communication. There is a reason the ancient promise speaks of dreams and visions in the last days, because when a destiny is reaching its moment of activation, heaven speaks not just in circumstances, but in symbols, impressions, internal awakenings that bypass the limitations of language and reach into the deepest chambers of your awareness. And just as Joseph was shown glimpses of a future he could not yet explain, so too will the insights arriving in your nights carry more weight than the world around you will initially understand. You will recognize the significance instantly, because these visions will land in your spirit with the heaviness of truth, not the fluttering of imagination. They will ignite movement within you, rearranging your steps, placing clarity where confusion once lived, drawing pathways where your mind once saw only fog. And do not forget the path you have already traveled. The fire you passed through was not symbolic, but real. The pressure you felt was not exaggerated, but intense enough to convince observers that your story would end in obscurity. The dismissal you endured was severe enough to make some believe that your purpose had died beneath the weight of disappointment. Yet, those assumptions overlooked the most essential truth, that when heaven plants something inside you, burial is not the end, but the beginning. What others mistook as your collapse was the moment your roots began growing deeper beneath the soil where no one was watching. In that hidden depth, something truer, stronger, and more resilient was being formed. And even though the darkness felt suffocating at times, it was also the cocoon where your old identity fell away so that your true design could take shape. You were not being crushed, you were being forged. You were not being erased, you were being rewritten. The very weight that pressed you downward became the pressure that shaped you into someone unbreakable, someone who does not merely survive storms, but is transformed by them. What they tried to bury became the ground from which you rise, and the brilliance emerging from you now is not superficial gloss, but the glow of refinement earned through seasons of endurance that no one but you and heaven witnessed. Every trial became heat that strengthened your mettle. Every disappointment became friction that sharpened your purpose. Every betrayal became the blade that cut away what could not go with you into the next dimension of your calling. And though the process felt merciless in its intensity, it has carved within you a radiance and depth that no effortless path could produce. Now you stand on the threshold of a new unfolding, carrying clarity, where there was once only yearning. Carrying stability where there was once only uncertainty, carrying presence where there was once only potential. And as the future opens before you, it will do so in a way that makes sense of every silent chapter you lived through. You will feel the shift before you see it, a stirring beneath the surface of your days, subtle recalibration in the way your spirit perceives opportunities, a heightened sensitivity to whispered guidance that you might have ignored in earlier seasons. It will be as though something inside you has been rewired to detect alignment before it becomes visible. And in those moments when dreams reveal their meaning, when visions unravel into understanding, you will realize that you are no longer piecing together your identity from fragments. You are standing inside a self that has integrated its pain into wisdom, its endurance into strength, its losses into a deeper ability to perceive the movement of destiny. The convergence unfolding around you is not coincidence, it is orchestration. A merging of the seen and the unseen, a synchronization of timing that has been in preparation long before you knew how to articulate your longing. You are stepping into amplified discernment, heightened clarity, accelerated purpose, not because you forced it, but because heaven has declared that the season of quiet formation has reached its appointed conclusion, and the brilliance that is beginning to rise from within you is not fragile or temporary. It is the light of someone who has been refined, someone who knows the cost of becoming someone who carries the gravity of transformation in every step. Those who once counted you out will have no choice but to witness the strength that was built beneath the surface, the vision that was sharpened through hardship, the authority that was cultivated through perseverance, and the beauty emerging from you will not be decorative. It will be functional, purposeful, undeniable, the kind of beauty that announces that something holy was forged in your depths. You are not stepping into a future that barely matches your past. You are stepping into one that transcends it, that justifies every tear, every pressure, every delay, and every night where you wondered if you would ever rise again. The answer is unfolding now. Not only will you rise, but you will rise with a weight, a brilliance and a clarity that no one, not even you, fully anticipated. Chosen one. You must understand with absolute clarity that nothing about who you are now is a remnant of damage or defeat, because every fracture you once mistook for evidence of weakness has been reforged into strength so precise and resilient that even you have not fully realized the magnitude of what has been created within you. And as you prepare to step forward, you will feel the truth of that transformation settle into your awareness like a long-awaited recognition. And knowing that the very voices which once questioned your potential will be confronted with the undeniable reality of who you have become, not because you seek their approval, but because the contrast between your past and your present will speak louder than anything you could say. This emergence is not soft, not convenient, not something that arrived without cost, because woven into every step of this ascent is the imprint of battles you fought without witnesses, storms you endured without applause, and decisions you made when surrender would have been easier. And that perseverance, quiet, stubborn, sacred, has weight that even the unseen realms acknowledge. The shift happening now is not luck, not coincidence, not random favor falling from the sky. It is the cumulative return of every moment you chose to keep walking through fire instead of collapsing in its heat. And because that fire has completed its work, you are rising refined rather than diminished, tempered rather than fragile, sharpened rather than scorched. Resistance may still attempt to surface, but it will no longer derail you, because what once intimidated you has lost its authority, and what once blocked you is losing its ground, crumbling beneath the force of the identity you finally accept as your own. The barriers that stood so tall before are weakening, not because they have changed, but because you have, and what opposed you is retreating in the presence of the strength that was forged within you long before you realized it was there. You are no longer carrying your destiny alone because support, spiritual, internal, and even external, is shifting into alignment with your movement, rising around you, not as a crutch, but as confirmation that this chapter is not one you must navigate by yourself, and the forces that once worked against you are folding, unraveling, dissolving, because they cannot stand in the presence of someone who has been remade by endurance. There was a season when they laughed at what you held, when your dreams were mocked because others could not discern their origin, when your vision was dismissed because it exceeded the imagination of those who measured you by your struggles instead of your spirit. But while they ridiculed, you were being strengthened, While they doubted you were being prepared, while they misunderstood, heaven understood exactly what was forming in you, because none of the pressure you faced was sent to break you, it was sent to crown you. Every hardship clarified the path beneath your feet. Every disappointment stripped away what could not travel with you. Every painful moment carved out a deeper capacity within you to hold what is coming next. And now, the very things that once made you feel small have become the evidence of how vast your inner landscape truly is. What was once hidden in you is no longer something that can remain beneath the surface, because the emergence happening now is too powerful, too undeniable, too complete to be contained. And as you move forward, you carry the unmistakable imprint of someone who was never abandoned. Only prepared, prepared through stillness, prepared through restriction, prepared through pruning, prepared through fire. The culmination of everything you endured is drawing near, and the timing of what is coming is not distant, not theoretical, not vague. It is close enough to brush against your awareness, close enough to quicken your spirit, close enough to disrupt the rhythm of your thoughts, with an anticipation you can feel in your chest, even if you cannot yet explain it. In the next 72 hours, there is a movement approaching your life that has been orchestrated beyond your perception, aligned with a precision that leaves no space for coincidence. And although you may not be able to identify every detail or understand every shift, you will feel the atmosphere around you tightening with purpose, signaling that something extraordinary is stepping out of the unseen and into your path. What once appeared permanently closed is beginning to loosen. What once felt unreachable is tilting toward you. What once seemed impossible is revealing its hinges, and the quiet unfolding that has been happening beneath the surface will not remain quiet when it reaches its moment of release. It will come suddenly with clarity sharp enough to cut through doubt with precision unmistakable in its timing. And when it arrives, you will know instantly that this is the moment everything in you has been preparing for. Chosen one. There comes a point in every transformative journey where the shift that has been building quietly inside you erupts into sudden clarity, and what once held you so tightly that you could barely breathe begins to crumble with a swiftness that feels almost unreal. And you will recognize it not as coincidence, not as luck, not as accidental timing, but as the unmistakable fulfillment of a moment that has been orchestrated long before you were conscious of the forces arranging themselves on your behalf. Just as the imprisoned step into freedom with chains falling off without resistance, you will feel the unmistakable release of burdens you have carried for years, and in that moment, something in your spirit will whisper that this could not have happened by chance, because the alignment is too precise, the timing too intentional, the weight lifting too completely. Your faith, though tested, though stretched, though shaken at times, has carried you to the threshold of an unfolding that does not resemble what you imagined, yet carries the essence of everything you hoped for. Do not misinterpret your current surroundings as an indication of what is coming, because what is forming ahead is far greater than any present limitation can reflect. And even though the familiar patterns of your life may look unchanged on the surface, the atmosphere beneath them is shifting in ways your spirit can already feel, a subtle but undeniable sense that your waiting is ending, that the season of confinement is dissolving, and that what held you for so long is losing its authority over your identity. The grip of regret, which has shadowed you with memories of what you should have done differently, is beginning to weaken. The weight of past mistakes, which once convinced you that you were disqualified from greater things, is cracking. The fear that traced itself through your thoughts, tying your future to your past, is breaking apart with the soundless finality of something that has completed its purpose and has no right to remain. This moment is not a slow unraveling, but a sudden severing. A release that sweeps through your spirit with such force that you may feel as though a layer of heaviness you had grown accustomed to has vanished in an instant, leaving you lighter, clearer, and startlingly awake in a way you have not felt in years. What once wrapped around your identity like chains is falling away, not through negotiation or gradual withdrawal, but through a decisive rupture, because the time for subtle shifts has passed, and the time for your emergence has arrived, and heaven wastes no breath when the appointed hour comes. There will be a distinct before and after in your journey. Before, when the pressure felt unrelenting. Before, when the same cycles kept circling back. Before, when hope felt thin and tired. And after, when the pressure collapses, the cycles break, and hope returns with a strength that feels new because it no longer competes with the old wounds that once overshadowed it. This release is not symbolic. It is experiential. You will feel the difference in your chest, in your breath, in the way your thoughts move in the stillness beneath your emotions, because what falls away is not just memory, but spiritual residue weight you were never meant to carry for so long. Shame loses its voice in this moment. Fear loses its shape in this moment. The identity you wore when survival was your only priority dissolves, making space for the identity that was waiting beneath, all along the identity rooted not in what hurt you, but in what shaped you. You will see with stunning clarity that your future was never chained to your past. It merely needed you to outgrow the belief that it was. The invisible walls that once hemmed you in are collapsing, and the horizon that once seemed distant is drawing near with incredible speed, inviting you to step forward into a new season that does not mirror the terrain you have walked until now. You stand at the edge of something expansive, something saturated with the kind of freedom you once only dreamed of, and the air itself around you carries the energy of transition, as if everything in creation is leaning toward your next step. This shift is already in motion, and the path ahead is charged not with struggle but with victory. Because the chains that once defined the pace of your journey no longer exist, and the landscape opening before you belongs to someone who has been refined, strengthened, and awakened through every battle you survived. And now, chosen one, prepare yourself, because the transformation happening within you is drawing new encounters into your path. People you were meant to meet, aligned opportunities that have been waiting for the right version of you to arrive, moments so precisely timed that they will feel like divine fingerprints on your timeline. Nothing approaching you now is accidental. The orchestration behind these connections is intentional, strategic, infused with purpose, and calibrated for this exact season of your life. You are about to cross paths with individuals who will shift the direction of your journey, not because they rescue you, but because their presence aligns with the expanded identity you are stepping into. Opportunities will appear that feel strangely familiar, as though they have been circling your life for years, waiting for you to be ready. And moments will unfold with such clarity that you will know instantly they were arranged by a hand greater than your own. This is the hour where every unseen thread that has been weaving itself through your journey begins to reveal its pattern, and you will walk forward into it with the awareness that you were not just freed, you were positioned, prepared, and appointed for what comes next. Chosen one. When you asked for direction, you did not realize that your question sent a ripple through realms you could not see, stirring currents that had been waiting for the slightest signal of your readiness. And now, movement has begun in ways that may feel subtle at first, but will soon become unmistakable, because what is unfolding around you is not a string of coincidences, but a guided sequence of moments, shaped with precision, arriving in your path like stepping stones laid out long before you ever knew you would need them. You will begin to notice conversations that linger in your spirit long after they end. Encounters that shift something inside you, even if you cannot articulate why. Opportunities that appear without warning, yet carry an eerie sense of familiarity, as though your spirit recognizes them before your mind does. And these moments will not be scattered or random, but divinely placed with timing so intentional that their significance will become clear only as you walk further along the path that is forming beneath your feet. There will be a sense of being led the same way ancient travelers felt a pull toward destinations they did not know they were approaching, and even when your understanding has not yet caught up, you will feel yourself guided from within, nudged by a clarity that bypasses logic and settles directly into your awareness. What once felt uncertain will begin to brighten, and where confusion once clouded your thoughts, insight will start rising like a light breaking through fog, illuminating not only the road ahead, but revealing truths about yourself that have been waiting beneath layers of doubt and hesitation. You will begin to see your past differently, realizing that certain disappointments were redirections. Certain delays were protections, certain losses were lessons wrapped in disguise in the scattered pieces of your journey. Those moments you assumed were unrelated, fragmented, purposeless, will begin clicking into place with a precision that leaves you breathless. What once looked disjointed will reveal itself as a pattern, A carefully woven sequence that led you to this threshold where awakening meets direction, and as this realization settles into your consciousness, you will understand that these encounters are not small interruptions, but pivotal turning points. The kind of moments that divide your life into before and after. For so long, you carried potential in silence, holding strength that no one recognized, carrying purpose that no one affirmed, feeling unseen even when surrounded by people. And although those seasons made you question your significance, they were also the seasons when the deepest parts of you were being formed without interference, because some gifts must mature in darkness before they can withstand the exposure of light. What has been dormant in you is stirring now, awakening with a force that will not allow you to shrink back into who you once were, because what begins in this season will guide you directly into the version of yourself you were always meant to become. The qualities that stayed hidden, your depth, your wisdom, your discernment, your capacity to endure, your ability to see beyond the surface, are stepping into visibility. Not to elevate your ego, but to reveal what was placed inside you from the beginning, and the timing of this unveiling is not premature or delayed, but perfect, aligned with a moment when your spirit can carry the weight of what is being handed to you. For years you felt overlooked, watching others step into opportunities, while you remained in the background, feeling passed over even when you were trying your hardest, wondering if perhaps something was wrong with you, and yet you were not ignored. You were preserved. You were held back not by limitation but by design, protected from premature exposure that would have drained your purpose before it had time to mature, sheltered in ways that frustrated you but ultimately fortified you. And just as Esther was positioned without understanding the depth of her calling until the pivotal moment arrived, you too were prepared, quietly shaped in obscurity for a time such as this. Now the covering is lifting, not because you demanded visibility, but because you have reached the maturity where visibility can no longer harm you, where exposure will not distort you, where opportunity will not overwhelm you. The fullness of what you carry, the wisdom earned through hardship, the clarity forged through struggle, the depth formed through years of silence, is stepping into view. And those who encounter you will be caught off guard by the authority and steadiness that radiates from within you. They will not understand how such strength formed in someone they once underestimated, how such clarity emerged from someone they overlooked, how such purpose awakened in someone they once dismissed, but their surprise will be the natural outcome of the brilliance that was cultivated in the shadows while the world assumed you were standing still. This is the moment your life begins to make sense in ways it never has before. This is the moment when the unseen guidance you have felt throughout your journey reveals itself openly, when the scattered pieces of your path align into a coherent direction, when the dormant potential within you ignites into a living force that reshapes the landscape of your future. You will feel it in the way opportunities begin to resonate with your spirit, in the way conversations spark ideas that feel divinely timed, in the way encounters carry a weight that hints at something larger unfolding beneath the surface. And as you remain open, alert, and grounded, you will see your life redirect itself with a precision that feels almost supernatural. This is not the rise of ego or ambition. This is the rise of alignment, the rise of purpose. Stepping into its rightful place, the rise of gifts that were never meant to remain hidden forever. You chosen one are walking into a season where the unseen becomes seen, where the intangible becomes tangible, where the potential you carried quietly begins to shape your reality, not because someone finally allowed it, but because you have grown into the version of yourself who can carry the weight of what was always meant to be yours. Chosen one. What is rising within and around you now reaches far beyond the boundaries of your own story. Because this unveiling is not merely about your personal fulfillment or the resolution of your private battles. It is a movement that will ripple outward, touching people who have been silently waiting for someone to step into the fullness of who they were destined to be, so they themselves could believe that their own awakening is possible. And as your life begins to shift in ways that defy logic and bypass the slow pace of human expectation, others will recognize with startling clarity that timing like this cannot be manufactured through ambition, strategy, or effort alone. For what is unfolding carries the unmistakable imprint of divine orchestration. As the parts of you that once lay dormant start to rise into visibility, Purpose will begin to spark in those who witness your transformation because something about the way your journey unfolds, your resilience, your endurance, your refusal to collapse under the weight you were given will stir others out of their stagnation, awakening capacities in them that they forgot they carried. They watched you navigate seasons where you were isolated, misunderstood, underestimated, and unseen. Seasons where it felt as though life was tightening around you from every angle, pressing you in ways that made even basic breathing feel like an act of courage, and yet you remained standing, not because you felt strong, but because something within you refused to surrender, even when surrender would have felt easier. Those struggles, which felt senseless at the time, were quietly constructing the architecture of your strength. Layering resilience over vulnerability, clarity over confusion, depth over fragility, until your spirit became capable of holding the weight of what is arriving now. Every tear you thought fell in vain, every night when the silence felt suffocating, every moment you questioned whether you would break under pressure was carving out greater capacity in you. The pain that once felt like punishment became a refining fire that strengthened your character. The scars that once embarrassed you became the proof of your survival, and now the very wounds that once caused you to shrink are fueling your forward movement with a passion you would not have discovered otherwise. You are no longer defined by what happened to you because those events, though real, though painful, though life-altering, were not the end of your story, but the catalyst for your becoming. And now you rise defined, not by the weight that once crushed you, but by the force that rose through the pressure and shaped you into someone who cannot be contained by the narratives others tried to impose. What once slowed you down will now accelerate you because you have learned to transform obstacles into momentum, turning resistance into readiness. And you are beginning to understand that you are not merely a survivor holding on to scraps. You are a victor stepping into a landscape that was prepared long before you understood the magnitude of your calling. The storms that once seemed to threaten your very existence did not end you. They trained you, calibrated you, disciplined your sight, sharpened your instincts, strengthened your endurance, and made you capable of carrying a destiny that would have overwhelmed the earlier version of yourself. And now chosen one. Another storm is approaching, not the destructive kind that tears your foundation apart, but the kind that brings release. The kind that pours out blessing and clarity and momentum in ways that feel almost overwhelming because they arrive not as gentle ripples, but as a surge, a force, a wave of fulfillment that sweeps away the remnants of old limitations and makes room for what was always meant to bloom. This is not a storm meant to break you. It is the surge that carries your breakthrough, the kind of movement that arrives with such intensity that doors you once thought were permanently sealed begin to swing open. Paths you once saw as impossible begin to straighten themselves before you, and opportunities you once believed were out of reach begin to find their way into your hands without striving. Change is moving quickly, faster than your mind can analyze or your emotions can categorize, and attached to that change is favor that feels almost supernatural in its timing, opportunities that align themselves without your manipulation, and momentum that accelerates your steps in a way you could never have engineered on your own. The forces that once pushed against you are now shifting behind you, not because they suddenly chose to support you, but because they no longer have permission to restrain you. The spiritual resistance that once clung to your progress is losing its grip. The internal battles that once drained your energy are quieting, and the external obstacles that once blocked your path are being repositioned so that even they contribute to your forward movement. You are being ushered into the next phase of your destiny with a velocity that can only come when preparation and divine timing collide. And as you step into this momentum, you will realize that nothing you endured was wasted. Every hardship, every delay, every disappointment, every prayer you thought went unanswered was part of a larger process, refining you for a future that requires the exact strength, depth, and awareness you now possess. The unveiling happening now is not small, not private, not insignificant. It is a revelation that will echo beyond your own life, a shift that will awaken others as much as it elevates you, and the path ahead, charged with purpose, aligned with timing, filled with encounters arranged long before this moment, will make you understand in ways you never have before that destiny is not something you chase, but something you grow into. You have grown into it, and as you walk forward, you walk not as the person who barely survived their storm, but as the one who commands the storm, now carrying not fear, but authority. Not doubt, but clarity, not weariness, but momentum. The movement that is rising around you is not an accident, it is your awakening.